That's the state of the war. We have Jonathan Tobin. He's the editor-in-chief of Jewish News Syndicate. Welcome, Jonathan. Israeli forces took out a top Hezbollah commander last night. What's been the impact so far, and what do you expect to come?
Well, I think Israel is seeking to deter Hezbollah and Iran from escalating the war further. I think Iran views Hezbollah as its failsafe. I don't think they're willing to start a full-scale war. They've been making a lot of threats, as they always do. But Hezbollah is always kept in reserve because they view that as their last ace in the hole if the United States or Israel were ever to attack Iran itself and its nuclear program. So I think it's a case of trying to get Hezbollah to stop shooting at northern Israel. You know, they didn't join Hamas in the war that Hamas started on October 7th out of fear of what Israel would do in retaliation, but they have made parts of northern Israel unlivable. You know, one of the least reported stories is the fact that there are hundreds of thousands of Israelis, mostly from southern Israel, but also northern Israel, who are currently refugees in their own country because they can't go home because their homes in southern and northern Israel have been rendered impossible to live in because of the security threats, and they can't go home until this war is finished and Hamas is finished.
And this is a little-known story abroad, certainly not as much as the other headlines in relation to Israel. So why was it important for Israel to take out this particular commander, do you think?
Well, I can't tell you why that particular commander, but I think as with all of Israel's efforts to force Hezbollah in Iran to stand down, they're looking to send a signal to them that they cannot attack Israel with impunity. Okay,
and do you think that Israel will need more support from the U.S. heading into what could be more active conflict with Iran and Hezbollah?
Well, I think Israel can't count on more. So, I mean, the reality is that the Biden administration has turned on Israel. That's the impact of the recent events in Gaza, in which the president used an unfortunate accident of war as an excuse to make a threat for an aid cutoff. They're also threatening Israel that they will allow damaging resolutions to be passed in the UN Security Council that threaten Israel's existence. Biden is using every threat he can because he is, I think, wrongly convinced that before he can defeat Donald Trump, he's got to defeat Benjamin Netanyahu and stop the war against Hamas. Unfortunately, the ultimate impact of that is that he's trying to keep Hamas alive, preventing Israel from finishing its war and finishing off Hamas. And that pretty much dooms the hostages that Hamas is still holding, because while the U.S. is putting pressure on Israel, Hamas has no incentive at all to make any sort of a deal to release the people that they have held in captives for over 6 months.
Yeah, the Biden administration's the tides do seem to be turning in terms of its approach to Israel, despite the Biden administration saying that they remain steadfast in support of Israel. You've spoken about the impact on hostages. What else could be the impact of this on the region?
Well, the long-term impact of this is terrible for the United States, never mind Israel, because by allowing Hamas to survive, by preventing Israel from finishing Hamas off, that's a huge victory for Iran because Hamas is its ally. That makes Iran seem like the strong horse of the region, undermines American efforts to bring about a greater circle of peace between the Arab world and Israel, but also undermining America's own interests in the region as Iran gets stronger, bolder, and opens up the West for more terrorism, because Iran is the leading state sponsor of terrorism in the world. And the more it is encouraged, the more its auxiliaries in Lebanon and in Gaza are allowed to continue threatening not just Israel, but the rest of the world. Ultimately, Americans will pay a price for that.
All right. Thank you so much. Jonathan Tobin, editor-in-chief of the Jewish News Syndicate. Appreciate it.
Thank you.